Hi everyone, welcome to your Advanced Computers 2 course. This is week 3. Week 3 we are now going to be starting chapter 2. So we're going to be spending 2 weeks on chapter 2. This chapter is all about doing analysis by using different formulas and functions. So we're going to be going up through slide number 20 this week. So just again partially through the chapter. We're going to be covering some of these topics using what they call relative, absolute, and mixed cell references and formulas, how to correct circular references, how to insert a function, how to insert basic math and statistical functions, and how to use date functions. So those are the topics that we're going to be covering this week. The next set of objectives are the things that we're going to be covering next week. So the first thing is looking at what we call cell references. And basically what this means is when we are getting ready to do a formula, we have to know whether or not we're going to go back and look at the 3 different ways we can go back and look at a function. So when we copy that particular formula, we have to know whether or not we want to copy that formula so that the value is what we call absolute. In other words, it's always going to use, in this example, cell A1. Always. No matter what, no matter where the formula goes in the document, we always want to use cell A1. That's what these dollar symbols do, before the A and before the 1. Relative means that if we leave it like this and we copy the formula, say we copy the formula down a column, it's going to also change this reference. So instead of being A1 in the next column or in the next row, it would be B1 and then C1 and so on. So as we pull the formula down, as we copy the formula down, the place that we're looking to for the formula is changing constantly. So that's what relative means. And then there's mixed, which means we're going to be maybe keeping it in the same column, but the row's going to change. That's what this first one would do. Or in the second example, this keeps it in the same column, but the row is going to change. So sorry about that. The column's going to change, but the row is going to stay the same. So A represents the column, 1 represents the row. So depending on where you put that dollar sign, it's going to determine what is fixed, what doesn't change. So if you put the dollar sign in front of the row letter, that won't change. If you put the dollar sign in front of the number, that's not going to change. And if you put it in front of both, like up here for the absolute, that neither one of them are going to change. You're going to be using that same piece all the time. So understanding cell references is going to be very important as you go through and do a lot of these formulas. So it's really important that you understand what that means. Now, they're going to go through and give you some examples of how that would work. So there's some examples of a relative cell reference, an absolute cell reference, and a mixed cell reference, and how those are going to actually work in a spreadsheet. And then they're going to talk a little bit about what we call avoiding circular references. So the idea is you don't want that formula to be, say we're doing a sum. We don't want to add the cell that we're putting the sum into the sum. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about circular references. So basically, if that formula refers to that particular cell in the formula, that's a circular reference. And you want to make sure that you don't have those, or else your formulas are not going to work. Then they're going to go through and kind of give you some basics as far as functions, what those functions will do, and what kind of calculation they're going to perform. These are just some basic categories of functions that are already there in the system, and that you can use. I use the sum function all the time. There's some that you will use much more frequently than others, and like I said, this is an example of sum. So basically, what it's saying is add up everything between cell A1 to A3. And that's what it's going to tell you. Anytime we're using a function, we always start with that equal sign and then something to tell it what to do. And sum is really just saying we're going to do some sort of mathematical function. In this case, because we have this colon, we're going to add the values. But we could put something different in there. We could do A3 minus A1 or A1 minus A7, or we can multiply it, things like that. But the idea that sum is there is telling the computer that we're getting ready to do a mathematical operation of some sort. So again, there's going to be a lot of different functions that they're going to talk about, how to use them, what are some of the basics, statistically, what are some of the basic statistical formulas, what are some formulas to be able to put in a date on every single document, things like that. So as you're going through this week's material, if you run across anything you have questions on, please make sure that you let me know, and have a great week.